said, they were all kind of psychotherapists and counsellors, so they'd be very in tune with feelings, very in tune with their observation skills and stuff like that. So I found it very useful because it was like stuff that we done in second year. It was called the Johari window, and I could really actually kind of see that theory in practice. But the counsellor and my supervisor, he was able to pick up on things that I didn't actually realise about myself. Things like wanting to appear competent and wanting to use my initiative kind of thing, which not asking questions, not asking for help. And I learned those things about myself, like, you know, and I was questioned on those things, like, why do you not ask for help, or why do you not? And, you know, my stuff, like, not wanting to be a burden to people, like, wanting to show initiative, wanting to put my best foot forward. So I learned a lot about myself, you know.
And that's brilliant from a reflection piece then as well, because within that student agenda that we had for our placement was the reflection piece as well. And was there anything that you found even from your tripartite meetings or intervention? Was there any time that you brought any aspects that you might bring into those tripartite meetings or intervention to supervision to bounce back ideas off your supervisor?
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, I had my supervisor. They were asking, was anything kind of coming up for me, or was there anything happening? I was just, I basically kind of relayed some of the stuff which I've just said to you there, about not being able to recognise your own limitations, I suppose. I kind of brought that to my supervisor as well. I just basically told them that I found the supervision very good, and stuff like this was coming up for me that, you know, I felt like I had to respond, that I had to act a certain way. And he was just kind of saying, like, just reflect on that when you go home and think about what you feel at that particular moment when you want to do something, when you go to do something, and ask yourself, like, why do I feel the need to go and do these things now? Like, I suppose it's like uncomfortable silences and stuff like that. People, sometimes we feel the need to talk, or, you know, if I want to help people, what's that all about? Like, you know what I mean? Does it make me feel better about myself to help someone else to kind of address the situation? So to kind of investigate that more. But I felt my college supervisor, he also had a background in kind of counselling and addiction studies and all that, so I felt that was very beneficial, like, that I could talk to him. I got another perspective, and yeah, I thought that was beneficial in that respect.
Yeah, very good. And so then a similar enough question would be, was supervision helpful or unhelpful in allowing you to achieve safer and more effective practice while on placement?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I don't know about safer. I don't think there was any things that was that you could deem unsafe, I suppose. But definitely, it would point you in the right direction. Things that you were doing, you know, that you could do better, I suppose, in future instances. But in general, there wasn't kind of a safety aspect, you know. Again, like working in ID and previously on the supervision in second year, you would have had that certain aspects about safety and, you know, getting, I suppose it would have been kind of challenging behaviour and different aspects of it there. If you're going out into basically outside into the community, there would be certain things you would have to worry about. So that supervision process would have helped you, because you wouldn't have that relationship built up with clients, giving you little pointers to what to watch out for, what not to do and stuff like that. But in general, the second year placement wasn't really, or the third year placement I should say, wasn't really about that, like, you know.
Yeah, very good. And so then, how would you describe your own relationship that you had with your supervisor?
Yeah, I'd say it was very good. I'd say it was very professional. Again, you're working with people who are in this field a long time, and I suppose they're very cognizant of their own boundaries. They've supervised many people before, so there's a very, you know, I suppose high understanding, or, you know, very expert led in that regard, like, you know. And that the literature, I think, touches on stuff like that as well, about people supervising people depending on their experience. If someone's in a supervisory capacity for maybe 12 months, well, then they should probably only work with graduates and stuff like that, you know. They can deal with certain things, but it wouldn't be any use for them to be giving supervision to someone who's maybe 20 years of practice, a lot more than themselves, like. So yeah, I think it's fairly relevant. And
do you find that you could have brought any sensitive matters to that supervisor? You wouldn't have felt uncomfortable bringing anything that didn't feel right? That's like issues that were brought up during placement that you felt uncomfortable with. Do you feel like you had the relationship with your supervisor to bring up those concerns and issues?
Yeah, I think as it went on, I mean, I suppose the first session, second session, maybe not so much, you know. You're putting the feelers out there. You're kind of, you know, I wouldn't have had a great lot of experience in supervision, so, you know, it was a learning process for me. Like, what is this all about? Am I asking questions? Am I, you know, divulging this information? Is that appropriate? Is that not inappropriate? But certainly as the relationship went on, as I got more comfortable in my general surroundings, as I worked beside that person outside of supervision, we suppose that kind of lent itself more to me feeling more comfortable. And I think it's very much a reflection of what we're all told about, like social care being the relationship is the hub of social care, basically. And I think it's a kind of a natural kind of progression. But as I kind of gained that person's trust in certain issues, I'd say to them, I knew it was confidential, and I knew nothing was going to happen outside of that. The boundaries were very good, and it was a very kind of separate piece of work on its own. So yeah, after kind of 2 or 3 sessions, I felt more confident in myself, and I wouldn't have any problem with bringing anything whatsoever to that supervision. I think that was reflective of how good and beneficial that piece was, you know.
Brilliant, yeah. And so, what was the culture then of supervision in your own placement setting? Like, what was the attitudes of staff members towards supervision that you're aware of?
Second year placement, didn't really exist. No kind of a framework. Third year placement, major emphasis on it. All the staff would actually have to attend supervision training, even if they're not given supervision themselves, to give them a general overview of what supervision is, what it entails, the different models. And as I said, I kind of touched on earlier, the very nature of that service, where you have 6 full-time professional psychotherapists. So I don't know if there's any kind of profession that looks at like what goes on in the mind, things that we hold back from, things that we keep to ourselves. Like, I think, you know, there's a recognition there from them. That's exactly what they do. So there's a large emphasis on supervision. It happens for all staff every 2 weeks, like for half an hour. Again, not in line with the literature, which says like an hour weekly. You know, in the real world, I don't think that was really feasible, but it definitely happens. And you know, they couldn't be going around carrying, you know, listen to 3 or 4 people talking about really, really hard stuff day in, day out, and not be able to offload or talk about how that's affecting them or talk about. So, like, particularly within that organisation, there was a very, very strong emphasis on the importance of supervision, without any doubt whatsoever.
Very good. And so, you were saying that your supervisor was the team leader. Would you say that they were appropriately trained for their role as a supervisor?
Well, I know there was one supervisor that was and went and done the course. As I said, everybody has to engage in the supervision process, has to attend. It's like a whole day course.
Okay.
And it's an individual trainer comes in and goes through the whole supervision process, different models, what you should entail, what supervision should not be. Gets examples of people in the room, of how poorly supervision can go sometimes, how it can actually turn around where the supervisor is actually offloading on you, things to watch out for. So no, I think it was orchestrated very well. It was done very well, basically, I think.
Yeah, good stuff. And then, what was the supervision policy that was implemented by your placement service?
I know that supervision was to be given half an hour every fortnight. As I said, all members of the organisation had to go and attend supervisory training.
And was that generally enforced, the supervision every week? Obviously, depending on matters going on in the service, generally that was well enforced in the contract.
Without doubt it was well enforced. You know, as I said to you, in relation to my own, if things come up, you would often say that it would be always put down in the diary first thing in the morning, everything that was going to happen that day, you know, an assessment at 2 o'clock, merely to sit with John for supervision at 3 o'clock, and each staff member would have that, every kind of week would have that period kind of marked out. Sometimes then it would happen where it didn't get to it today, it didn't happen because X, Y and Z happened. But generally it would be put back then to the next day, you know. But it would always be seen to within kind of a 2 or 3 day window, you know. It wasn't something, we didn't get that, we'll do it next week or the week after. It was prioritised. It was definitely prioritised, as much as it could be in relation to the complexities of the service and dealing with the unknown, I suppose, if you like. But it was always, you know, hallmarked as something that needs to be done, I suppose, you know. And
then, as a student in that service, were you made to sign a contract, or were you made aware of your own responsibilities as that supervisee?
Yeah, well, I actually made them sign a contract, to be honest with you, and that was a requirement. It was as a student in third year placement, you know, and that came together really well, because as I said, there was a major emphasis on the importance of supervision from the organisation. And there was obviously that piece that we had to sign a contract that we would meet weekly for supervision and kind of identifying goals and objectives, going back over